Power, the most destructive of enemies. The fire that consumes, why your success is erasing your true self. I must remind you that the following is not an informative text, but a reflective essay designed to present Carlos Castaneda's ideas about the enemy of power, how it affects us in daily life and how we can prevent it from harming us. Who does not desire absolute power? The answer is, those who know what it truly entails. On the path of knowledge, we have had to confront the enemy of fear, which blocks our way with insecurities and a false sense of comfort. Then, clarity blocks our vision with the certainty that we have reached the end of the road. Only when we overcome this enemy and gain real experiences can we claim to have obtained power. But power, like fire, is transformative. It can give us warmth, it can purify, it can turn metal from solid to liquid, and if we are not careful, it can destroy us completely. What is power really? But what is power really, and what is its role on the path of knowledge? The definition I use to describe power is the capacity to influence reality, to change it little by little. And this is momentous. All suffering, all problems, all discomfort arise from the fact that reality is not as we think it is. We think we are strong, but for that to be real we must strengthen ourselves. We think we are intelligent, and to align with reality, we must overcome the challenges life presents us. The greatest challenge in finding our true self is discovering the place we occupy in reality. And this is very difficult, because we live surrounded by false ideas, conditioning, judgments, and customs that make it very difficult to find who we truly are. This is why power is the element that changes the rules. With power, we can change reality and turn our desires into facts. The ideal scenario, clean power. The best scenario for exercising power would be to arrive clean, conscious of our true self and our genuine desires, which largely spring from our vocation and service. Understanding what vocation and service are is crucial to finding our authentic desires. Vocation is that set of abilities aligned with our genetic emphasis, with our personality, and that resonate with our internal values, providing a sense of well-being. Service is the need to externalize what is produced from our vocation and put it at the community's disposal. The musician's example. Let me give an example to make this clearer. A young man in his adolescence discovers he likes music. First he learns to play guitar, then bass, and later decides to study music theory to understand rhythms, notes, and musical structures. However, he doesn't get a job as a musician. Instead, he gets an office job. But when he applies what he learned about music in the office and finds a rhythm in his work style, he can improve his productivity or, at the very least, enjoy that small change by integrating what he lives with what he enjoys. His vocation is music, and his service is in applying music to his work rhythm. And of course, I would bet that if he continues playing instruments, he enjoys playing for other people. That is service. So when we arrive clean at power, as in the story above, we can transform a sterile, monotonous environment into something productive and enjoyable. That is power. The problem, corrupt power. However, since we rarely have awareness of all the false ideas, beliefs, and conditioning within us, this is hardly the scenario we witness. We arrive with ideas of what should be rather than what is best. And instead of accepting reality, we change it according to our beliefs. And this is where the well-known phrase is born, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Negligent bosses and dictatorships exemplify the risks of power. The fire of power consumes the true self, because if we can change reality according to our false ideas, there is no need for the true self. It remains in limbo, withered and insignificant. All that remains is the illusion of what we believe should be, regardless of who it harms. Under this scenario, power not only stops the path of knowledge, it destroys the self itself, trapped in a cage of imposed and unnatural beliefs. An uncomfortable reality. It is incredible that in more than 70,000 years we have not created a culture of effective power that serves the community, rather than the individual. But that is reality. What we can do now, in this moment, is be aware of why power is simultaneously the pinnacle of the path of knowledge and its greatest enemy. The solution, service and responsibility. At the individual level, the best way to overcome the enemy power is through service and responsibility. The idea of power and responsibility is not something new. It is literally older than the Bible. In Luke 12 verse 48 there is a passage that explicitly indicates it. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, even more will be asked. The idea is not new. Figures like Voltaire, Winston Churchill, and Franklin D. Roosevelt recognized this relationship as fundamental. Today, the phrase "with great power comes great responsibility" has become part of our collective consciousness, thanks to Stan Lee's script in Amazing Fantasy No. 15, the hallmark of Spider-Man, one of the most popular heroes. Ironically, although the phrase is in the consciousness of many people, its meaning seems to resist the collective. But it remains true nonetheless. With the ability to influence reality comes the implicit responsibility for its consequences. This is why legal processes are so time-consuming. Changing a law is not merely changing words in a book, but understanding what the interpretation of those words implies and whether that interpretation can be abused. This is why laws enacted without investigation turn out to be the most harmful. The balance, a fundamental quote. This reminds me of the quote from Ursula K. Le Guin in A Wizard of Earthsea. But you must not change anything, not one stone, not one grain of sand, until you know what good and evil will result from that act. The world is in balance. This quote makes us aware of the impact that every change in reality has and that they should not be taken lightly. In practice, exercising power, such as ordering a group of workers to work faster, could, ironically, result in the failure of a project, especially if we ignore their needs or if it affects the morale of the group. Let's not even speak of the impact this could have on an entire nation. Redefining service. On the contrary, service is a form of positive balance, but it carries a name laden with negativity. When we think of servant, we think of someone in a low position, subordinate to another's whims. This is what we think when we hear that power should be at the service of the community. The reality is that service is more like social media posts. Service is sharing what we can do for others, because it makes us feel good and brings well-being to the community. The changes we generate for others can also benefit us. It is a win-win, and it keeps those corrupt ideas at bay. Why? Because most ideas from the imaginary are capricious and selfish. Service is sharing with the world, not keeping power for ourselves alone. My final confession. And to conclude, I would like to confess something to you. The reason this medium is called a powerless mage. It is because my intention with these materials is to change the way people act in reality. However, I cannot simply snap my fingers and make everyone get along and be aware of all these things we have discussed. Nor can I force people to adopt this way of thinking. What I can do is give you the tools to begin change, convince you of the benefits, and hope you make the decision to transform information into experience. This is my service, and my responsibility is to reach you with the information clearly and adjust it to reality when I make an error. But in the end, I will not be the author of change in your lives. You will be. So remember, the power is yours.